What if you remove this from the motorcycle? In that case, what you're left with is the engine, and your exhaust system like that, your exhaust pipe like that. So what happens when you just have the catalytic converter right about here, somewhere here, and nothing else to kind of regulate the back pressure? What happens then? Well, in that case, what happens is that you have scavenging happening. You have the exhaust gases being this whole thing, this engine is almost 90% similar to an air pump. So if, let's just say, 50% of air goes in and 50% of the same air that is being pumped out, if the same air that is being pumped out, let us just say 50% is being pumped out, then you can understand that this portion is healthy. So it's a simple air pump. You don't want air escaping or getting lost anywhere inside. So if 50% air goes in and 50% air comes out, it's a healthy setup. But if you keep this at 50% and you increase the amount of air that is being pulled out, or if you increase the velocity of air that is being pulled out, because there's absolutely no restriction here, then things can get a little too lean in there inside the combustion chamber. You will be risking a lean condition there. I mean, too much air, too little fuel. So what we do is, FI, fuel injection, what we do is we program it for more fuel. And so if more fuel is pulled in and more air is pulled in with a high velocity air intake, if there is more air going into the engine with K and N kind of air filter, and more fuel going in because of Powertronic ECU piggyback system, then the volumetric efficiency is kind of maintained. The same amount that goes in is being pulled out, and it kind of, the internal temperatures don't become too hot, things don't become too lean. I have checked K&N filters for with intervals of let's just say 10,000 kilometers, and they still turn out to do their job really, really well. They don't let in anything. Like you can see, there's absolutely nothing in the airbox. Well, in this part, I'll talk to you about what needs to be done to get the Powertronic to work in sync with the increased airflow and the exhaust system on your bike. You should understand one thing. the amount of air and the velocity of the air that goes into the engine is the same thing that you want to come out of the engine. If you just increase the velocity of air here and you do nothing here, then you are kind of screwing up your engine. Your temperatures at the exhaust valve becomes a little too much. The whole thing becomes lean and becomes hot, and your exhaust valves, 90% of the times, they get burnt with a free flow system. So the more important thing to do is compensate for that higher velocity of air that is being pulled out with some kind of a fuel system and a high flow air filter on this end, on the intake end of the engine.
Sure pulls, man, sure pulls.
So what the software here, what the Powertronic does for you is it's not something that is a replacement for the stock factory ECU. It's rather called a piggyback system, because it kind of influences the ECU to thinking that, or it kind of manipulates the ECU into thinking something else that it wants the ECU to think. So it's definitely something that will sound all Greek and Latin in the beginning, but then when you sit with it, when you try and understand it, it's just like any other software. In fact, it's far more simple and far more easy to comprehend than any other software. So for all the guys who think that motorcycle can be tuned only on a dyno, this is going to be very important information for you. Yes, one part of it is true, that is, peak power output can be derived easily on a dynos, because you are going zero throttle, full throttle, whack open, whack open, whack open. You're checking for the peak RPMs, peak explosions, peak power, and it's easy to derive values based on peak power output and make tweaks here and then and hand over the map to you, which has the most explosive figures here. But this is the second part. This is the most important part. That is, how does it fare on the streets? How does it fare on the highways? How does the piggyback that you get from Powertronics and the maps, how do they fare on a varied riding conditions? How do they fare on all sorts of terrains? Well, that is very tricky. That is totally up to the rider. This is the most important part that I would want to stress on, guys. Tuning is not something which is either 0% throttle or 100% throttle. It is not also zero like how it is shown here. It is also not 0%, 6%, 13%, 20%, 26%. Yes, of course, those guys have done a fantastic job of breaking or chopping the throttles at these percentages and figuring out values which aid in overall performance. But that being said, this is also partly up to the rider to understand what works best for him and his riding conditions. I'm stressing on this. This is totally what you want from it and not what it has to offer, like how it is marketed. That's a very wrong message that is being conveyed, that you plug in the Powertronics ECU and here you go, you have all the power in the world. No, you don't. You have all the power in the world that they promise, only at a certain RPM and at a certain elevation and at a certain temperature and at certain so many conditions have to fall in place for you to be able to derive that kind of power. Well, that's definitely not going to be the case with anyone and everyone. Peak power is easy to tune. I was working on carburetors all my life and it's super easy to tune peak power, but it's extremely difficult to figure out the right kind of throttling and power, related power, for the entire rev range. And kudos to these guys that they have managed to figure it out for 0% to how many values do they have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. My God, they've broken the throttle into 16 portions, and they also have about value ranges from 500 to 7500 or 8500. Because there's no rev limiter now, it can of course go to 8500. I'm sorry, I stand corrected. 8500 rpm. So they've pretty much tried their best possible effort. They pretty much tried their best efforts to get this to work for all possible riding conditions. But then again, what I'm trying to say is this greatly boils down to what the rider wants and how he goes about getting it. So that's the whole of it. That's the basic idea of how you go about tuning something on the Powertronic, and what you achieve. If any of you have doubts, if any of you have questions, if any of you want to know more about how I go about doing things, of course you can get in touch with me. I'll put my number on the description. You can get in touch with me via WhatsApp, and I'll be glad to help you guys with whatever it is that you want. So that's the Powertronic's contribution to the performance of the vehicle.